What's up, fam? Welcome back to the podcast. Y'all, this is another episode of Sisters and Friends, and I have a really cool surprise for everyone. I have literally my own future sister-in-law and my amazing, gorgeous mother-in-law. And so I'm so excited to have Maia and Cheri on the podcast.
We are so excited.
We are so excited to be here.
You know,
proud of you.
Seriously, such a
so
blessing.
funny because this is obviously the casual podcast, and so I'll just go ahead and say something really funny is that I just said Maia and Cheri, and literally for like a year of our relationship as my mother-in-law, I
Cheri?
could not figure out what to call you.
And it's such
like
do I
go with
No,
Miss Cheri,
Cheri.
Miss Huff?
Yes.
Is there are we close Mom? Is it like what do you do?
and it's honestly whatever is comfortable because I just feel like so close to the two of you already, and then I feel like God has blessed me with two boys that have found the two most amazing women. So it's like I have now gained daughters, the daughters that I never had. So it's such a cool kind of
It's so cool.
Cheri,
So Cheri,
Mom, whatever.
on that level.
I used to call her Miss Cheri, and I was so tired of saying Miss.
Yes.
I'm just so not a formal person. So I
No.
started calling her Mama Cheri.
Yeah,
because-
me too.
And that's so fun too. Like whatever is comfortable. Seriously,
Yeah.
because
I remember I
literally-
called you Mama C for a while.
Mama C for a
And
little
then
while.
when I had Honey, I was like, oh, this is great
Yes.
because Honey's paved the way. Now I'll call you Cece.
Yeah, because we were trying to figure out
funny.
because that's such a cool what to be called as a mother-in-law, as a now grandmother of a sweet almost 9-month-old.
Yes.
Like such a cool. The way God works, like I said, just having two boys and now two daughters and now a granddaughter that I am getting to do. And I told Sadie, I'm not going to cry. But getting to do just kind of now all the girl things, is such like a cool blessing. Such a cool
Which
blessing.
I do think is cool to talk about for a second because you mentioned this one time whenever, I don't know if it was one of our friends that asked you or it just got brought up that you didn't have a girl. And we're like, did you ever wish that you had a girl or kept trying? And you're like, well, now I do have girls,
Yeah,
and
so
there was
true.
this season of, a long season of your life where it was just all boy, everything.
Just all boy
All
things.
baseball, all
Yes,
sports.
all sports, all boy things, which has been, so fun because I only have brothers. So I kind of, God knew what he was doing, the boy mom. And then it's just been so fun now to do such fun girl things and then now having a granddaughter and just getting to do just so fun, looking for girl things and dressing
Yes,
a girl up.
I
And
have to say it's so funny because you're such a good boy mom, but you're also the most girly person I
Yes.
know. Which is
it's kind of that is funny. That is funny.
I know
That
it's a
is-
way to maintain.
I'm trying to
Yes.
maintain, the girl thing as well. And I think that, it's just, to be honest, it's so crazy to think, like I said, just, having boys and doing all of the boy things. And then the season of life where you're this has been your family. And then they go out and find the two most amazing daughters
sweet.
that I could have just
so sweet.
only prayed for, but, just
Yeah.
never
That's so sweet.
imagined. And it's been such a blessing.
sweet.
Such a blessing.
Well, sorry you're still in the hot seat because I have
Yes,
I have
yes.
more questions for you. So I remember whenever Christian and I first got married and we were sitting in a hot tub somewhere on vacation and Chance was talking about how y'all listen to this podcast and it was about how whenever your son gets married, it's so hard as the mom to go through, it almost feels like a breakup.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so sad. But then I'm but I'm so happy that I'm married. Sorry, I caused the breakup, but it's also a beautiful thing. And and you were explaining that it's hard, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I do think that there are a lot of moms out there who really are struggling with that breakup. They're struggling with that part of giving their son away. And you did it with me, with Christian, and now you're about to do it with Chance with Maya. And I know you love us so much, but can you speak to that? Because I think that there are probably moms listening who are going through that, who are
so good.
how is she doing this with such grace? And how is she, doing this with strength? Because I know that's hard too.
And it is. And it's such a cool thing, though, because it's, it's truly God's design, right? I mean, the Bible says that a son, a man, will leave his father and his mother and become one with his wife. It's such a cool God design that
Yeah.
you just could never, your family's going to always keep growing. And, and children. And that's such a cool, it's such a speaking into the generational thing of it all
Yeah.
because, that's the most perfect design. That's
Yeah.
the Bible is truth. That is
Yeah.
exactly what is said. And that is just kind of the thing that, I've always prayed for y'all, even before I knew you, which is just, such a cool thing to see how just God's timing is
Yeah.
so perfect.
Yeah.
When y'all met, his timing, so perfect. Like I know you've said before, had y'all met even
Yeah,
a year
before.
before,
So true.
had
Yeah.
you
So
met
true.
even, a
God.
couple of years before, just how perfect it was. And the same with Chance and Maya. They were friends,
Yes.
in a high school setting that they didn't go to the same high school and then wound up reconnecting over COVID,
Yeah.
which is such a
crazy.
cool, another cool thing because I think so many, girls are constantly, where will I find my husband? And,
Totally.
not really even enjoying whatever season they're in, whether it's a
Totally.
singleness or whether it's, actually dating or engaged or just that kind of thing because, you and Christian found one another in Seaside, Florida.
Yeah.
And,
Which was so
you know,
random on
and-
like a couple day
On a-
vacation for me.
Right.
You know?
And so, you didn't find him here in West Monroe. You didn't
Yep.
find him in Auburn. And the same for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't at FSU.
It was just by
It was over
random kind
COVID,
of
over
chance.
Ba-boom.
By chance. Yes.
literally by chance. And,
Yeah.
and even for me and my husband, which will be married 28 years.
Come
Coming
on.
up, 28 whole years.
That's awesome.
And even, of course we met, way before social media, way before social media. But, he and I lived like 15 miles apart.
Yeah.
But we
That is so
didn't
crazy.
It's
meet
crazy
That is
until
really
college.
crazy.
until college. And of course he's, 4.5 years older than I am. So, God's timing's so perfect.
Yeah.
We would have never dated had we met
In
Yeah.
high
in
school.
high school because I was, way too young. But I'm just saying, like, it's just God's timing is so
Yeah,
perfect, whether
it's
it's,
cool.
of course that wasn't a social media time where, like, I would have known him had it been, right? Because
Yeah.
we lived so close to,
Yeah.
to one another in two little different towns, but still so close. And
crazy.
then, met when I got actually in college and
Yeah.
just, that couldn't have been more perfect timing.
Yeah.
So
So cool. God's
it's
timing
just,
is so perfect.
God's timing is so perfect.
It's like so many times like you want things on your time, but actually you don't. Like
Yeah.
because if I would have like gotten married whenever I thought I was gonna get married, because everyone in my family got married at 18. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Not everyone matures that fast. And Sadie Rob did not. I needed time. I needed 4 good more
That's funny.
years
Yeah.
to figure out some things and wait
Yeah.
for Christian and
Yeah.
all those things. So the timing is perfect. And so then I want to shift to Maya because you came into the picture at the perfect time
Yes.
and the most random time.
Yeah, it
and
really
so
was.
bouncing off of what Cheri was just saying of like, I'm sure coming back from college right after COVID, that you weren't thinking I'm about to meet my future husband. It's no secret that my papa is one of my favorite people on the planet, my grandpa, my mom's dad. And one day we were talking and he was telling me one of his famous family stories. And I realized how many stories that I don't know of his. Then that's when I discovered Storyworth. I ended up getting it for him as a gift, but it's actually been the gift that just keeps on giving to the whole family. Through Storyworth, I've actually gotten to see so many of my grandpa's old pictures that I'd never seen before and stories from his elementary years, which honestly I would have never even thought to ask. One of my favorite memories was when I asked him what was something he would want to tell his great grandkids one day. And it was just so sweet because Honey is his great grandkid. And I was like, wow, like I had this treasure. I'm going to get to read this to her one day that her great grandpa said. So if you've never heard of it, Storyworth is an online service that helps you connect with your favorite people through the best memories and stories. So for instance, every week, Storyworth would send Papa questions in an email to help prompt his favorite memories. So it could be anything from what's your favorite childhood memory to one of my personal favorites, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten. Sometimes, no matter how well you know someone, we don't ask these questions, but Storyworth has got you covered. It will ask all the questions you don't think to. It really is so cool. It's such a good thing to just be intentional about asking questions and learning about one another through stories that you don't know. After 1 year, this is awesome. Storyworth actually puts together all the questions into stories, including the photos that you added, for a beautiful keepsake book. And my grandpa, who was actually in the book industry, was so impressed by how great of quality the book was that was sent to him. And it was the story of his life. So I love it so much. I can't wait for one day to get to give these stories to my daughter, our kids, and just let the stories of our life just keep on telling and leaving a legacy. I honestly think it would be so fun for Christianity to do together for our grandkids as well. So I'm telling you, you'll love it. Get to know your loved ones better and preserve their special memories right now with Storyworth. Right now, for a limited time only, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/whoa. That's story, STORY, worth, WORTH.com/whoa to save $10 off on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/whoa.
It really is so funny because I had just told my friend, I was like, I'm so content just being single. Like I was, it's always how it happens. When you're not looking for anyone, I was so ready. And even when Chance texted me, I remember we were all with all my friends and we were jumping up and down in bed because we were so excited. But then the next day, I was kind of texting him a little bit and I looked at my best friend and I was like, I don't really know if I'm ready for this. I don't really know if this is really like the time. Like I just want to make sure that it's from the Lord because I had just said I don't really know if I want to date anyone. Like I'm just so happy being Maia. And then that's when Chance came into my life. But it was so cool because it was the most perfect timing because he was previously at Vanderbilt and I'm at Florida State. And so just kind of we both had our big kind of heart changes where we really found the Lord. We've known each other all throughout high school, but whenever we had those changes, it was more like kind of our freshman, sophomore year of college where we really found out like who we were and who we weren't. And then whenever we did like started dating, it was the end of sophomore year. So it was just so cool how God and everything was in his perfect timing, even for us too, because it was so random that because Chance has never been home for a long period of time.
Because he plays baseball.
Because he plays baseball. And so whenever COVID happened, that was the first time he had ever been home for a long time. And that was the first time I had ever been home for a long time. So we actually got to hang out and just build that connection. Like no restaurants were open, nothing. The only thing we could do was
such a sweet
play tennis.
I want to talk about that because so many couples, I feel like we were talking about this yesterday. Like you have to date well because dating well sets you up for your marriage.
So
and
true.
like y'all aren't married yet, but I can already say y'all are gonna have such a great marriage because you've dated so well. And I feel like people kind of, I guess, sleep on the dating zone. You know, it's like they don't have fun. They don't do anything fun. It's like kind of like, you know, they're just so used to going to the same restaurant, doing the same thing, or just texting each other every day and not really being intentional. But y'all had some epic dates.
We really did.
So give the people a window into some of y'all's dates.
So actually where he proposed was the dock that we had first gone on, like some of our first dates. And one of them was like watching church out on that dock after we had coffee that morning. So that's just incredible. So cool. And then that dock is also where we would go and we would paddleboard. So there's like dune lakes and stuff by like our house, our home. And so we would go all throughout the dune lakes. And that was like when the first date too, I was so like intentional about the questions I asked. I was like, have you ever been in love? Like, have you ever like right out the gate? Because I just wanted to know. I was like,
let me just know what I'm getting into.
I just wanted to know what because we'd known each other since high school, so we already had like somewhat of a foundation, but we had never kind of come to the part where like, okay, I actually like you, you actually like me. Like now we're kind of in the process of like seeing if we want to date. And so I remember one of our first dates, I literally asked him on the paddleboard, I was like, so like, have you ever been in love? And he was behind me paddling. He's probably like, what is this girl? You know what I mean?
Like, whoa.
He's like, oh my gosh, she's already in love with me. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm actually trying to figure out if I am. But it was just so sweet because we just went on a lot of dates where you actually have to talk to one another, you know, and one thing he was really, really good at that I wasn't good before was FaceTime. And because of COVID and because everything and because we are long distance, like FaceTime is seriously such a gift and it's so awesome. Really Y'all are all really good at FaceTiming. But it was so sweet because he had told me after we had first kind of connected again, whenever he had asked me out on that date when I was with all my friends, and he had asked me, he said, okay, whenever you're alone, like let me FaceTime you, like whenever you're like on your drive home, because he knew I had a long drive that day. And I remember I was about 7 hours in my drive. It was like 9-hour drive, so I only had 2 hours left. And he FaceTimed me. And I just remember that was such an intentional part of just like, hey, like, let's actually talk. Like, let's not text. Cool. Like, let's actually talk, like, see each other face to face, you know? Or we would get on the phone and talk. And I remember my parents were like, who is she talking to? Because I talked to him for like 5 hours. Like, it was, but that's kind of a good, like, it's a good sign when you could talk to someone for so long, because that person, if you are going to date them and you are going to marry them, then you're going to be talking to them for the rest of your life.
Exactly. I was talking about that the other day, how Christian and I said something when I was doing a vlog. I was like, oh yeah, Christian's about to be back, which it'll be so fun because we haven't seen each other for 2 days. We'll have so much to talk about. And I was like, But you know, it's kind of funny. Even when we're together every day, I still somehow have things to talk about. You know, like there's still something to say.
Yeah.
But that's so true. And Christian was like that too. You raised some intentional boys because I remember Christian. Every time like we talk, he'd be like, "Okay, do you want to talk like Tuesday night at 7?" Like he like always set a time, which I'm like not a very good like I'm not a planner, so I was like kind of thrown by that. And I was like, yes, we can talk Tuesday at 7. And sometimes, like, Tuesday at 7 would come around and I'd just be getting a call from Christian, like, oh, it's Tuesday at 7. Like, yay. And, like, we would talk for hours. Yeah. And we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time, like, me, Lainey, Sarah, and Gracie. And so there's nowhere to really go to talk. So I went out on our balcony, not knowing they could hear me, like, the whole time. And I'd come in at, like, 1, and they're like, so, yeah.
I was in a sorority house, so I had, like, that was my only, I lived in another room with 2 girls. And so I would go out on the patio, and someone would be like, oh, y'all just seem so happy. And I was like, yeah, you listen to the whole thing.
I know.
You know all
you
of
can't
it.
hide.
You
But
can't.
part of that's so fun because, like, your friends are there. And that once you get to the stage of, like, you are getting married and you have your bridesmaids, like, those girls walk through the whole thing. And, like, I kept y'all up till 1 every morning on that balcony talking. Like, they were just there for it all. And it's so fun. So I remember whenever I met you and you were so sweet and so kind. And I remember I was actually using the bathroom when you came in the house. And, like, your voice carries so well. And you were, like, so sweet. And I remember coming out like she's like this, she's so kind, like so positive, so nice.
Sweet.
And I
Thinking
came
that in the
out,
bathroom, just
I was just like, can't wait to meet her in just 2 seconds. And you were just so bubbly and filled with joy. And
so sweet.
you have this brand, you know, M&M Designs, and you had the smiley face hats, which people were probably like, no way, that's her, because, or maybe they all know that because you know that's part of your life. But I remember thinking that reflects you so well. Like your smiley face is literally you, like your joy is that face, and so it's just so cool. But I want you to talk about that. Like, how did that get started? How did you start something that became so successful, and what did that look like?
It was all God, and it was such an accident. It's so funny because everyone sees a smiley face hat, you know, like the Keep Smiling hat that we have, or like our TYJ and all of our things that are really positive and just spreading positivity, and they all think, well, oh, you must have been this extremely positive person. And yes, I definitely have been like a very joyful person my whole life, but it's so funny because the actual time that the hats came alive was whenever I was in my like deepest, darkest, like worst season of my life. Like, I don't even know if you know this actually, but I was going through just a really hard time. Like I was struggling a lot with school, and just being in college is hard, and it's really hard when you don't know who you are going into college, and you make so many mistakes on trying to figure out who you are. And so I was really there, and I mean, it just really took a toll. I was so anxious. I was so sad. And so I was actually on a trip with my family, and I remembered we were going through Dallas, and I was trying to look for all of these things. I was like, can I just wear something that like reminds me like to keep going? Like literally, like that's where the Keep Smiling hat came from, was literally because I needed a reason to keep smiling. And so I was having such a hard time, and I was like, you know, I can't find anything, and I'm in Dallas. How can I not find anything in Dallas? And so I went home that night, and it was 4:00 in the morning, and my family's all in the same hotel room, and I'm sleeping next to my little sister, and I turn on a light, and I start like drawing all these designs, and I drew like the Keep Smiling and the TYJ, because my dad always said, thank you, Jesus. And so that's where that came from. I just drew all these things, and I was kind of looking like, how do I do this? Like, how do I make it? And it was so neat because I went back to school, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to make this for me. So I ordered one hat and one patch, and I said, this is my hat, and I'm going to wear it to remind me to keep smiling, because in college you kind of have to choose your own route. Like you can't really go with the crowd, and I learned that. It took me a little while, but I learned that finally my sophomore year. And so I kind of wore it when I would go off on my own, and kind of like need a reminder, like, oh yeah, I am alone right now, but it's okay, like keep smiling. And so cool. It was so cool. And then one person would be like, hey, like, where'd you get that? And I was like, what'd you mean? Cool. Where'd you get that? And so then I started making I'd order a dozen, and then I would order a lot of patches. And so it just was totally by God's design. Because I was a pre-med major. Like I was interdisciplinary medical sciences. So preclinical perfection. So I was like supposed to be a physician's assistant. I had my nursing assistant's degree, and now I'm pretty much pursuing business and ministry full time.
Amazing.
Which is so cool.
Which is so cool.
Which even, you know, speaking a little into that, like you had once even told me, and just God's timing and all of that, because you began that over COVID, really, and had classes been fully in person,
it would have never.
You wouldn't have been able to actually then do both at the same time. So you were able to pour into not only your class, but then this thing that you started for yourself that then so many other people just wanted to be a part of, like, and wanted to wear, and also be like, that is the coolest thing. Just keep smiling, you know?
That's so cool.
COVID gave me an opportunity where I was kind of getting to the point where I couldn't keep up with the orders and stuff. So I knew I needed to make a website. And so I was like, okay, I'll go and I'll make a website. But if I make this website, I don't want anyone else to buy it and not know, like, where it came from. That it came from a source of, no, we need to keep smiling. And it was so crazy because God gave me that from my life that happened a season ago. But then it was so relevant in everybody else's life because it was when COVID hit. And the world was literally
needed that reminder.
So lost and had no reason to smile because everyone was so scared. So it really was so cool.
Man, God is so intentional. And, like, if you have the eyes to see Jesus, you will see him. And, like, you really do have the eyes to see Jesus. And everyone can have those eyes. And I just think it's so cool that, you know, in a time where it was really dark and it was really hard, and in even a season of COVID where the whole world, it was really hard, like, you had the eyes to look up and say, like, okay, like, I know I need something for me. And, like, we are responsible for taking care of our own heart and taking care of our own actions and stuff. And so I just think that's so cool. And I love that it came from a place where you needed it, because I think that's the misperception that people think when people are, like, doing something awesome, they're like, oh, their life's perfect. But normally it's out of a place of pain. And I remember, like, I mean, most every single message I talk about comes out of the place that I needed to hear it. I need to write it because I need a reminder. And it's like people are like, oh, she's got it all together. I'm like, I'm preaching to myself before I'm preaching to anyone. And it's so cool that you mentioned that your dad said, thank you, Jesus. And I love whenever we get something from our Father, because it reminds me of, like, how we get what we know from God. And, like, whenever I was 5, I, like, used to get so bothered by the fact that my dad gave everyone else nicknames but me. And I'd be like, I want a nickname, like, I want to be cool. And I actually, like, remember when I was young thinking, like, I didn't have a cool enough personality to have a nickname, because, like, when people have, like, a nickname, that means that they're, like, known as something, you know? And then my dad would always say, like, Sadie, you're just the original. You're just the original. That's just who you are. And he would, like, always say this to me. And then fast forward, like, you know, 10 years later, and I'm like, I want to put a message out there. And then I'm like, what message do I need? I'm like, my dad always said I'm the original. And then there's a sign behind you that says live original. Like, so it comes out of this place of, like, pain in your life and, like, what your dad spoke over you. And, like, that is how, like, a spiritual representation is, like, when we have things in our life that are hurtful or that are painful or whatever, letting God speak into it not only seals it in your own heart, but it normally also reaches other people. Because, like you said, you weren't the only one that needed that message. Everyone needed that message. I'm not the only one that needs the message to live original and remind you that, like, you can be confident who God created you to be, not compared to the rest of the world. Everyone needs that message, you know?
So true.
And so when we open up about the things that we're going through, it's amazing, because normally the enemy wants you to think, oh, well, people will think you're weak. But no, people see God's strength. And so I just think your story is incredible. And I'm so glad you shared that with me and with everybody, because, like, people do see you and they're like, she's the most positive person ever. She's a ball of joy. And you are. But that doesn't mean you don't go through things too. And, like, look at what's come from that. And so now I want to talk to you about this, because not only did you start something, but you've sustained something. Which is hard to do. And so talk about just the challenges and what I love about you, Maia. And now she has a podcast. Everyone go listen to it. In This Together, right?
Yes, In This Together
podcast. So, like, you've started all these things, and these things are hard to do. Like, they don't just happen. You don't just, I'm just going to start a podcast. Like, that takes work, and you don't just start ironing hats. Like, it's hard. Like, you have to order, you have to do it. So how did you sustain this? And what advice do you have for people who, like, maybe have this desire to start something, but they're kind of struggling with that sustainability side of it?
Yeah, I think the thing that so many people think is whenever you start a business or you start anything, like you start a podcast, that you have to have all of the things together and you have to have it all planned out for, like, a year. Because we go to school and we're to be, like, a business major or whatever they say. You have to have a business plan. You have to do this. And if the Lord wants it to happen, he'll make it happen.
That's right.
Like, he could use a rock. He can use you, you know? So I think that's the thing that everyone always asks, like, how did you start the business? And it's like, actually, you look, and it wasn't even really me starting the business. It was kind of by accident. But the way I kind of helped sustain it was just kind of realizing that God brought this, and as long as he keeps on bringing things and they're in accordance to his will, I'll say yes and amen. And so I feel like that's kind of been how, I mean, even with the podcast, too, I loved, you posted, I think it was a reel or something the other day of you, and you were, like, holding honey, and you were writing your book, and it shows, like, those things take hard work. Like, I know, obviously, we show, like, the amazing moments and stuff like that, but there's moments where I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning packaging orders because I didn't know what I got myself into. No one else wants to do it because no one else is on the line. So it it's so there's times that you kind of have to you have to hunker down and be like, okay, if this is what God is bringing me to, it's okay if it takes hard work. It's okay if it takes 4 a.m. nights or mornings or whatever it is.
There's a verse in Psalms 127 we talk about all the time at LO, and it says, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. And then it says, but he gives his beloved rest.
Yes.
And I love that, and we talk about that all the time because, yes, the Lord has to build the house. The Lord has to sustain the house. There's something amazing about knowing that, like, I don't have to, like, push this and keep this going. If it's gonna get out, God's gonna use it. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But at the same time, you gotta work hard. You gotta show up. You gotta be willing, because so many of us are like praying for God to move, and God's like, I am moving. You move.
Yes.
Like, I'm always moving. Like you move. Like you put your hands to work. So there's this balance of working hard but trusting God. Working hard and trusting God with the outcome, and just knowing that, like, I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna work my butt off. At the end of the day, God is the one that's going to bring it out. God's the one that's going to sustain it. And sometimes things don't work. You know, sometimes you have something that's for a season and you move on. But then there is something to being planted in something and working through those hard stages of it. And you've done an incredible job with that. So I want to get back to you, because one thing that you do so well at as a mom is,
Lots of things.
a lot of things. I could go on a lot, but one thing that you do really well at is you have these, I'm going to include us as kids. You have these 4 kids. I am a child of yours now. Yes. I know, Maia's almost there.
No, and
but you treat us like, you treat us like we're yours, for sure. Like, you have these 4 kids, and we all have, like, different things going on. Like, Maia is crushing it, doing M&M and all the things that she's doing. I'm doing a lot of things with LO. Christian started a new podcast and just, you know, has started being a dad and all the things, and then Chance is playing baseball in college and all that. And I think, you know, that can maybe feel overwhelming sometimes, like, how do you love all the people the same? But you love everyone the same, and you know, not one of us, I would say, feels like you don't care about what we have going on. Like, you always ask, you're always intentional. And so my question is, do you actually put intention behind that, or do you just love everyone the same? Because I think, you know, my mom even talks about, like, she has 6 kids, like, but she's so into all of it, so she has to intentionally be into all of it.
And I think it's just, it is intentional, but then I feel like, too, it's just such a natural thing. And, like, you know, being, you know, when you first become a mother of one, and then you're like, how can I love another child even as much as this one? And then it's just so crazy how God just, that capacity is just there. It is so there. And just such a cool thing to witness, you know, all the things that God is doing in all of your lives. I mean, just literally so amazing that, like, just kind of like you starting what you've done and what you've started, what you've done, just like saying yes in all those little steps that you could have never imagined where you would be now, right? Just all of those little things. And even for the boys and what they've done throughout their lives, just how God has prepared them in each step of the way, and in getting married, and then now having a child, and then Chance now getting married. It's just such a cool thing, and I feel like I just wouldn't miss any of it in the world. And so I just think that's such an important thing, you know, just to be there, be present. And
do a good job at it.
And I feel like I always just want to felt like I'm available.
You are.
Know, for all things. Like, I just...
Even a phone call.
Even a phone call. And it's funny
she's
because
never missed a phone call.
You don't.
Well, and it's just and it's one of those things that I'm just kind of, and not that I'm just like such a phone person, but I don't want to ever miss anything. So there's a little bit of that, like, not a fear, but of a FOMO, and not even a FOMO, but maybe just like, I just want to be available. Like, if I miss, you know, a phone call or just whatever, I just want to be available.
It's so cool because
so
you
good at
ingrained it in Chance and Christian.
Oh, Christian.
Like, I was such a horrible communicator, to be completely honest, before I met Chance, and he's so good about, like, picking up the phone, but it's because you modeled that for him, and now he knows to pick up the phone, and he's great at calling or checking if I'm there on time, or like, where are you? Have this, and I'm like, oh, I'm here, just, you know, like, just track me, and he's like, but he's like, no, I need to, like, hear your voice, and I think that's so sweet that they've literally learned that from you, being so good at that.
I have to say, Christian's so funny because, like, he's never put pressure on me to be like you in any way, which is so kind, in the sense of, like, you are very put together, and, like, you make your bed every morning, you have, you know, make sure everybody has lunch, like, all the things, too. And sometimes I'm like, woo. But one thing Christian has put on me, which I appreciate, he's like, answer the dang phone. Like,
yes,
like seriously, he's
chance.
like, it actually means a lot. Like, it actually bothers me when you don't answer the phone because it makes me feel like I wasn't important enough for you to answer. And I'm like, man, that's so sad. Like, I do want to answer. And I do now. Like, I actually, like, really intentionally try to always be available to.
And that's something they
family.
probably, I'm sure they've made fun of me over the
Oh yeah,
course of the
sometimes
years because
sometimes it's really funny.
If I don't hear from, then I might worry, and I don't mean to worry because we shouldn't worry. But I'm just saying that is a thing. That is a real thing. But I just feel like I don't know. Family is so important, and that is something you have to model.
Yeah, one thing that's like the best is when you answer, you're like, I'm in the shower. You're like, why did you answer? Like,
I know. Is it important? I'll be out. No, that is funny. That is real. It is real. It's just because, and the funny thing is just even if. Like, you're so cute when you'll send, because Honey loves a FaceTime. Like, she loves to look for the FaceTime. And then, like, if I do miss it, and then it's so funny when you'll send me the Snapchat picture or the snapshot picture of
I just want you to know it's
on the FaceTime. Here it is.
And it's not super important, but it is important.
It is just the
Super,
cutest
but-
thing ever. And I just feel like, all of that and those moments are so special and so important just to be able to pour into whatever everybody's doing.
Yeah.
I just
And
feel.
it's true, like, we don't want you to miss anything, too, because, like, for those who don't know, Christian's family lives in Florida, and we live in Louisiana, and so that is hard, and sometimes y'all miss things, or we miss things, or whatever, but, like, FaceTime really is such a gift, because, and it takes that, like, making sure that we pretty much talk to y'all every day, because we try to, like, keep
so
up.
Sweet. And, and that is such a cool thing, too, because, nobody ever really knows what that's going to look like, because... my husband, he's one of 4, and we actually all live in Niceville, which is so rare, right? Mm-hmm. And then, my brothers don't live where we live, but my parents live there, and my in-laws live there, so that is such a cool thing. And so just, you don't ever know where people are all going to wind up. And so, like you said, FaceTime is the best.
It's the best.
And the fact that we are so blessed to get to see you both so often, which is...
Really do.
Like, so cool,
It is
because
cool.
you would think because you live away, it's not, but, so we've been so lucky, and just being able to, either we're coming here, or y'all are coming to Florida, and we're getting to see Maia just as often, and, even had a cool trip to Tallahassee recently, stopped in just to get to see her shop, and
that's where you
what
make
a
it
cool...
such a priority, because they didn't have to stop. You know what I mean? Like, because
Well,
family is such a priority. Whenever you're driving by, it's like, oh, I'm going to stop and take, like, an hour or however long to come see me. Like, that was so sweet. Like, that just shows, like, how much you put it a priority.
That was just such a cool thing. And my husband Chandler is all about, like, even from leaving there, he's like, that is the coolest district. And then it already had him thinking of a cool business idea, just the way his brain works for where we live, and just how, like, he can give back to our own community in such a way of, like, artists like yourself. And that was just really funny.
That's
just
so
to,
cool.
like, he was like, I am going to talk
Mr.
to...
Chandler is always thinking.
He is.
And
He
it's
is.
just, and it's a cool thing to see him and the way he works like that, because
Yeah.
he was like, I'm going to call Brandon, and that's something we can really do in Niceville, and I feel like really do something cool for some artists in our area.
That's so cool.
So it's just like,
You never
so that
know
was-
what a little stop will do.
No,
never
it was
know.
just such a, a cool thing. So I just think
That's awesome.
just that not ever wanting to miss
Yeah.
out, and just kind
That's
of
cool.
wanting to always be intentional on
That's
visits
cool.
or FaceTimes or...
You do a good job at it.
Whatever.
Well, last thing I have to ask, because the people want to hear about Love Hurts. I'm sure everybody wants to hear about Love Hurts.
Yes.
The TV show all of America's Missing.
They are. They are
I mean, if
missing.
anyone's listening to this podcast and you are like a TV show person, or you can get like this show needs to be on television.
That's
So
funny.
okay, but
funny.
for real,
Yeah.
like we obviously are doing our thing, but you're doing your thing too.
Yeah.
You're in a tennis league.
So I play in a
Superstar.
tennis league. No. It's so fun, and it's just a group of women that we began. Most of us did not play tennis growing up. Some did, and those girls are really good. And some didn't, like myself. But no. But no, we just kind of like began this tennis group.
But
And
tell
it was a bunch
us
of
how long
moms.
ago.
Oh my goodness, the kids were literally in elementary school. So it has been really the same core group of women, and we've added some over the years as girls have moved into town, and some unfortunately have had to move out, but literally that we just kind of do life with. And it's more than tennis, and it's just get-togethers. It's such a cool thing to see this group of women, there's 16 of us, 17 of us, that just all have such cool different gifts, and with whatever it is, and we celebrate life together,
Yeah,
whether it's
so many parties,
weddings, or it's baby showers,
or music videos,
birthdays, big birthdays.
Let me just say, like,
just
of all the people at our wedding, the people breaking it down the most were the Love Hurts tennis
group,
team.
which is so fun because they all know, and it's such a cool group that, loves well, that does things together well, that we do. We love tennis and we love each other, and just kind of have such a cool group that can go through life together. And that's something, even in our area, there's so many tennis groups, and I just can say that we are still, like, yes, we do play tennis, but we're also just the best of friends. Just good friends, that we get to do things together and do life together, whether it's, so many things with...
It's everything.
Everything.
Which I have to say,
literally.
like, I just wanted to make that point because, y'all have been friends for like 15 years or whatever and played tennis together, and that's obviously been a part of it, but it's more than that. It's just community building.
Community.
And I want to say that because so many moms out there, I think sometimes you're like, oh, like, it's so hard to have a community when you're a mom, and that is true. Like, even just having one kid, I'm like, it is hard because you're busy and all the things, and it's so easy to just put that to the side. But that is a great idea to, like, start a tennis team, start a league of something. And like she said, they didn't play tennis before. They
we were literally a bunch of never-evers.
Yeah.
started something.
And they actually worked their way up. They were, like, started at the bottom, and now they're at the top of the league. And, like, I'm just, I'll brag if she won't. Like, honestly, I'm on Love Hurts too, so hey. It's just awesome. It's a lot of fun. And so I think kind of the theme of this whole conversation has really been around intentionality. It's like, if you want community, if you want to have a solid family structure, like, it really does take intentionality. And I understand that there are some things that are really hard that people are walking through that keep them from having that community or keep them from having that family bond or that family tie. And to you, just want to say there's so much compassion there. And just because, we're talking about all the good stuff doesn't mean there's still not hard stuff. Every family walks through things, but it does take being intentional, forgiving well, loving well, showing up. And so I hope, if anything, this conversation has been an encouragement to you, and just you've seen how God can work in just incredible, intentional ways, and how you can also show up and work in incredible and intentional ways. So, Cheri and Maia, thank you for being on the Sisters
Thank you
and
for
Friends
having
podcast.
us.
And I love you guys so much.
Yes, we love you so much. Y'all are the best.
Thank you.